to FOBtv, the future of business. I'm your host, Kevin Benedict, and I want to thank each of you for joining us today. My guest I'm very excited to share with you is Suhas Uliyar from Oracle. Suhas, thanks for joining us.
Kevin, thank you for having me, and a pleasure to talk to you again after a long time.
Absolutely. Now, Suhas has a really cool job. He's the Vice President of Digital Assistance, AI, and Integration at Oracle. And Suhas will have you share a little bit more about what that all means and what's the scope and scale. Since you and I talked, the world has changed. How are you surviving and adjusting to life under a pandemic?
Oh, wow. Well, I'm locked in my office starting at 6 in the morning. I don't leave my office till 10 in the evening. So as I've been telling my family, I'm zoomed out. I'm on Zoom sessions nonstop. The good news is Zoom is now on Oracle. So so that it's working great. So it's great to see sort of the Oracle cloud working well. But, you know, on one side of things, it's wonderful not to be traveling and spend more time with family. On the other hand, we do work a lot of long hours. We realize how big global really is when you look at at different time zones. But, it's the new norm. We just have to adjust and move along. My days of complaining are over, and I just have to accept it and move on now.
Oh, yeah. It's like it's not going to help us, is it?
Exactly. You can just depress yourself more.
So how did Oracle as an organization, how did they adjust to having to operate under the pandemic conditions?
Very well. I mean, the Oracle organization immediately sort of followed all the processes and rules. We were asked to work from home, only the essential workers, and we had to go through very, very strict processes. But, being a global company ourselves, right, and being in technology, pretty much everyone was used to working from home. My team and folks who I work with travel quite a bit, and so when we're not traveling, we tend to work from home. So, Oracle has always been wonderful at providing all the technologies, the connections, the connectivity, and the tools required to work from home. And so, very quickly, we moved to do our business on Zoom. And I think the number one focus, obviously, from Oracle was for the employees' well-being and safety. And number two is make sure our customers are not impacted. Yeah. And so, that was very heartening to see the way we stepped up to help our customers. And that's sort of what makes it long hours because, our customers are global and sometimes we have to be at 6 o'clock up in the morning talking to a customer in Europe, sometimes at 11 o'clock talking to customers in India. And so, we've moved to a working from home scenario, and then also sort of our systems where we're all in the cloud, right? So I think that's the most important thing, that all our dev processes, all our lifecycle management of applications development, all the tools are already on the OCI cloud. So it made the transition a lot more easier for us because also remember, Kevin, that even in a normal environment or pre-COVID, who knows what new normal is, but yes, pre-COVID, we have development teams in Europe, we have in Australia and India. And so we're used to sort of working in this sort of remote way. And as a result, you need to have the systems in place where you can work remotely, right? So it was quite an easy transition. I think the most difficult part was not to have those quick discussions or a coffee or, in the cooler. But I think over time, we've managed to do that as well. Like, every Friday, we have a social, we have an online social, and we just sort of, get out and talk about kids and family and what's going on. So, the adjustment was hard, but, we were used to it, and Oracle did a great job with that.
Oh, that's terrific. Yeah, we had our virtual cocktail hour, and everybody brought their pets, right? So everybody has their dog on their lap and introducing dogs, kids, you name it. So do you find yourself, would you say your team is more productive now or when you guys could travel?
Great question. I've never actually thought about that. I feel that we are more productive, at least because we're not, especially during the travel time, right? I mean, we're not spending time traveling. So we're more productive from a perspective of, getting the work done and the long hours. So I think sort of from my perspective, or let me put it this way, from people with my profile who travel quite a bit, I think they're definitely more productive. Engineering, I'm not sure, actually.
Yeah.
Because they do like the whiteboard sessions and being able to interact. But having said that, we haven't missed a beat in our releases and quality. The output is pretty much the same. My productivity has certainly increased quite a bit.
Oh yeah, I'm a content guy. I'm doing a lot of strategy docs and articles and things like that. And man, I've been a machine,
Yeah,
producing content because I'm not going anywhere.
exactly.
There's no shows. There's no conferences. There's no.
And you know what's happening, Kevin? I don't know if you feel the same, but for me, the weekday is a 7-day week. And the reason I say that is because we're not going out at certain times, right? There's only so many movies you can watch. There's only so many conversations you can have with people. And at some point, you want to sort of go and just catch up on some work. And for me, sort of, I do work quite every day, and you always get some ideas when you're doing something other than work, and you immediately want to sort of either write it down or follow that up. And the week is an amazing time to do that.
Absolutely. So talk to us about the products you're responsible for, Suhas, and what's going on there that really makes you excited.
I've got sort of two major services that I product manage. One is the Oracle Digital Assistant, and there's some amazing stuff going on there. I'll talk about in a minute. And the other is the very exciting integration platform, which, as you can see on my screen, overcoming integration challenges. So it's called the Oracle Integration Cloud. And that's sort of in the analyst term or the industry term is called an enterprise iPaaS, integration platform as a service. So those are the two main services. Now, on the digital assistant, we have seen an incredible adoption in terms of employee and customer self-service type use cases. And also, given that there has been a major adoption of the cloud, we've seen this momentum for quite some time now, but COVID has really accelerated a lot of that. Now, people want to be able to get access to information anytime, anywhere, especially from home.
Yes.
Integration has become an extremely important and critical piece of this. They do need, at least at some point you could run around with emails and paper and get sneakernet integration done, but those days are far behind us now. And so those two, both just from a pure adoption perspective, it has been amazing. From a product perspective, the digital assistant, we have core machine learning language or machine learning component, if you like, or microservice. We've expanded that to make it sort of more broader to multiple cognitive services. So we've added a lot of awesome sort of transformer type technologies, embedding technologies like using some of the advances in things like BERT and Muse, using sort of transfer learning. So what's really exciting about the digital assistant is we've really made it enterprise grade, right? What do I mean by that? When people talk about enterprise grade, it's typically security and scalability and all that, right? But we've been able to sort of train our natural language models with enterprise data, right? And we've had a good sort of 3 years worth of data along with all the other data support that we have from the application teams to really make the natural language understanding really, really optimized for enterprise use cases.
Is that a different language than you would get on the street?
It is, in the sense that, for example, right, you ask a question like, what's the EBITDA for Oracle, right? The language on the street will not understand what EBITDA means.
Yes.
Right? And then there's lots of these. So there are enterprise acronyms, if you like, or TLAs, right? But then on each domain, you have something very specific, right? And some customers have their own domain-specific vocabulary, right?
Yes.
So to understand that is really, really difficult. Like, for example, how many different ways can you use the word vacation, PTO, sick? There's a whole bunch of these different sort of acronyms and lingos that we use, right? So that's sort of one. The other thing that's really exciting is, I think the last time I spoke to you, sort of, we built a platform, but the platform got adopted by the Oracle application teams. So they've been building chatbots, what we call skills, out of the box, integrated with Oracle apps, which means that if you got an Oracle HCM app, for example, then literally out of the box, you can now start having a conversational interface with HCM, right? So it's pre-trained, it's got all the models pre-built, it's got all the dialogue pre-built. Our customers don't need to do anything. It's literally installed along with HCM, along with ERP, along with Sales CX, and all those other components, right? and we have some very, very large customers using this, and we're really seeing good, and we'll come about how this is helpful during COVID, but that's another huge thing, right? The third thing is we acquired a company last year that brings us our own enterprise-grade voice.
Okay.
And so we released that along with a digital assistant in record time, and Larry talks about it in his the earnings release as well. So we're seeing that as a very differentiated way of interacting with enterprise data, which tends to be pretty boring, right? I mean, general ledger and financial data.
Yes.
And so being able to sort of, talk to it, just like, we use Alexa or Google Home to talk to our consumer stuff, being able to now use a mobile app or a browser to be able to ask questions like show me the latest general ledger for this company, or, what was my last procurement, what's the status of my procurement, etc. So that enterprise grade voice, and what makes it that enterprise grade is that the data does not go to these public providers, right? So no one's listening into your conversations. All the privacy is maintained. We are compliant with GDPR and PII. At the same time, we're able to extend this to your specific vocabulary as well, right? So that's another cool thing that we've done.
So give me some practical use cases, Suhas, because I'm thinking of a big open floor office plan and all these accountants just talking to their laptops.
That's a great example, right? So here's where it makes very useful. So obviously in a sales CRM, right, when you're doing transcription services,
Yes,
right? In hospitals, especially with COVID, right? If I want to get an update on a patient, right? You're not going to have a mobile device. First of all, you're completely PPE, right? You're completely protected. You got all these gloves. Yes, you can have gloves that are sensitive to touch, right?
Yeah.
But again, in an environment, you're not going to take your mobile device or your iPad, right? So how instead of that, you can just sort of talk to that, like, okay, update on Zach, right? His temperature is stable, and so we've done that, and it's really powerful in the way we can handle transcription services from that perspective, right? That's one example. But to your point, in the enterprise, sitting in an office with multiple people, what we've done is it's not like Alexa where the output is always back in voice, right? So there's ASR where you're talking and converting that into text, and there's what's called TTS, which is taking text and converting that to speech. We provide you the option of how you want to interact. So, for example, you can talk to it, but the response is back on a mobile app, or the response is back on a browser.
Yes.
So your competitor sitting next to you or your colleague sitting next to you, doesn't get disturbed, nor is he seeing all that, right? So what we do is, we make it as part of your application flow, as opposed to just a standalone thing that just sort of talks to you.
Wow. So how has the pandemic kind of influenced your strategies and solutions?
So, I think the biggest thing is it's been a huge disruption in sort of your common daily processes, right?
Yeah.
And so as people have gone to work, gone working from home rather, impact or the load on HR has gotten too large, right? HR and IT, right?
Yes.
I'm talking about employees, right?
Yes.
And so we've been providing self-service solutions with HCM and with IT help desk. So it's amazing. I've spoken to a few customers who employees have never worked from home. They come to work at 9 and leave at 4 or 5.
Yeah.
And when they leave their work behind, right? Now imagine for them to figure out what does VPN mean, right?
Yes.
How do I set up a Zoom session, or how do I set up a WebEx session, right? And so there's a lot of sort of IT support kind of things, right? So here, the digital assistant has been really useful for them to answer this question, like, how do I change my password? Okay, how do I set up Zoom? How do I order a headset so I can work from home, right? With my kids bawling in the background, my dog barking, how do I make sure that I'm not disturbed when I'm on a Zoom call, right?
Right.
So employee self-service, along with also being able to be notified in real time about what's going on, the changes that are going on. The policies are changing. Nobody knows what the right policy is. No one knows what the right thing to do is, and this is sort of you're all learning in real time at the same time. So being able to quickly ask a question like, okay, am I a critical employee? Can I come to work? Right? And not having to sort of VPN, go to web pages, which would take forever. So we're seeing sort of the whole aspect of employee self-service really rising to the top.
Got it.
So what we did was we spent some time in quickly building a whole bunch of sample skills or sample bots that also sort of connected to things like the WHO or the Red Cross and the Center for Diseases, Control CDC,
Right.
and so on and so forth. So not only were you able to sort of get your questions answered related to your organization, like what is my policy for the pandemic? Can
Yeah.
I come to work? How do I set a VPN? Where do I go for help? How do I order a headset? So all those things, right? Then also integrating with data sets from other organizations, so I can ask questions like, "Why do you wear a mask? Will my pet be impacted by this?" And so on and so forth, right? And then obviously, sort of the self-service as it relates to, okay, I really want to procure a headset, but how do I do it now, right? The actual procurement process as well. So we built a whole bunch of these out-of-the-box samples or out-of-the-box skills that customers were able to take this, and many of our customers were able to get something running in a week, right? That really helped them take the load off. Now that's from an employee self-service. Now the same thing from a customer service. And so we always saw customer service as a huge sort of value proposition for the chatbots or the digital assistant. And now with the fact that suddenly sort of you have call center agents who are now suddenly have to go to work from home, they're not quite set up quite yet. So what we saw was a huge adoption in chat as opposed to call center phone calls. I mean, not that it's dead, but we saw a huge blip or a rise in chat, right? So being able to now provide sort of self-service in customer service was also another huge impact to that.
Oh, that is incredible. Matter of fact, I just read, Suhas, that in Australia, they're using chatbots as kind of the first level of directing their citizens where to go based on their diagnosis. So the chatbot will ask them a series of like 10 questions, and based on their answers, will then direct them through links and forms and other things to what they need to do next, whether schedule with your appointment, your doctor, or get tested and all that. And I thought, man, that is phenomenal. That's like your first level of healthcare provider is a chatbot across the whole country.
Indeed. In fact, we have a couple of amazing use cases. So in the Middle East, but all their COVID responses are handled by the digital assistant, right? And that includes sort of calling in to chatting, to WhatsApp, to Twitter, any channel. You can report, you can find out what to do, all that information. Now, in the UK, there's a very unique way of implementation where what they realized was that there are a lot of people at home who are dependent on phones, right? So being able to sort of talk to a chatbot and say, "Hey, are you alone? Can we help you? How do you feel?" And in fact, sort of this is able to sort of call out, make an outbound call to sort of the community and actually collect information about people. And that was behind that there was a process. Okay, now that we've identified what challenges people have at home, how can we go help them?
Oh,
yeah. We're seeing this quite a bit now.
Absolutely. So, Suhas, let's set aside COVID for a minute and just look at your normal kind of product development. What's most exciting to you about what's coming out this year around AI and chatbots?
So the most exciting part is sort of putting together our integration and the digital assistant sort of services together under the banner of what I call intelligent automation.
Okay.
We also call it intelligent process automation, intelligent automation platform. So what I would say is, sort of the word of RPA came upon us, robotic process automation, but it was very much focused on sort of the last mile and the sort of what I would call bots for automating processes, doing sort of, I would call a screen API, right? Basically sort of, doing a screen scrape and then automating the process, right? But what we're doing is sort of how do we automate the business process using AI, right? So for that, there's a number of different things that we're doing. So what we've done is sort of our machine learning model has been expanded to handle any type of cognitive service. So what do we mean by that, right? So from the point of being able to process documents, right? So whether it's an invoice or an expense or a claim form or a new application for opening an account, right? It could be image recognition from, hey, do you have the shoe in color red, right? from classic long text analysis, text analytics, sentiment analysis, right? Object recognition. So, and some other tools that we're also adding are things like decisioning, right? Forecasting. And so all of these sort of really help in automating your business process. So let's take an example of that, right? So imagine that whether from a mobile app, now here's sort of very interesting. What we're saying is today the digital assistant is all about sort of a chatbot, right? I mean, you're conversing with it, right?
Right.
But what is an assistant? An assistant is someone that helps you, right? So what if you took an image of an expense receipt, or you got an invoice from your mobile app, or your chatbot, or your web app, right? And you wanted to follow a process all the way to integrating that to your system of record, but done in using machine learning, where it recognized the document, it recognized the pieces of the document, and was able to then automatically map it to, here's my ERP data, here's my CX data, here's my CRM data, right? So that's sort of the whole end-to-end intelligent, what we call the intelligent automation process. Okay. And so being able to do things like, what's my next best action, and also recommend or take action on your behalf. So an example of that would be, let's say that, approvals, as a very simple example, right? I have a certain way of how I do approvals. Sometimes I don't look at the details. So there could be instances where I could be looking at approvals in more detail versus not looking at detail.
Right.
And my machine learning algorithms can look at that and determine like what kind of requests come in where it could automate on my behalf, right? Another example is, let's take sales discounting, right? Sometimes, the discounts fall within a certain range where you can predict that, hey, this order coming in will be fulfilled. But there may be certain variations, right? So in that variations, I want to be able to understand, like, what are the parameters that a VP of sales uses to approve it? And can I start recommending to them that, hey, this should be approved because under norm, well, this requires some more data behind it, right? So that is sort of what we're trying to do, is really automate business processes. Until now, we had the process automation tool, which was a workflow engine, but now we're adding machine learning to the workflow engine.
Oh, that's fascinating. Suhas, I want to thank you so much for pulling back the curtains there at Oracle, sharing not only your life, but kind of the fun, exciting things that's happening there in your part of Oracle. Thank you so much for doing that.
Thank you, Kevin. You take care.